I actually could listen to that stuff for a long time, but anyway. Our next presenter, Mark Smith from Vitus Marine. Mark L. Smith is the CEO and owner of Vitus Energy. He is a fourth-generation Arctic entrepreneur with family working in both the Yukon and Nome areas during Alaska and Canada's gold rush days. He began work in the Bering Sea in 1973, participating in the commercial fishing as well as tug and barge delivery of freight and fuel. Following completion of an undergraduate degree in business administration in 1983, Mr. Smith completed an executive master of business administration in 2002. Through various mergers and acquisitions, Mr. Smith has served as president of Yukon Fuel Company, as a board member of Northland Holdings Group, as vice president of sales and marketing for Crowley Petroleum, and as CEO of Pacific Fishing Assets. He formed Vitus Marine in 2009 and continues to develop a diversified fuel distribution business serving the North Pacific and Arctic regions. Mark Smith.
I want to thank Institute of the North for providing this forum. I'd like to thank Dermot for inviting me. I'd like to thank the folks of Iceland and Akureyri. This is a wonderful format. We're going to start this presentation with a confession. And it erases almost any difference between people in the Arctic and people all over the world. And that confession is, I love my iPhone. All the pictures that you see in this presentation were done with an iPhone. Comes in very handy, I found a couple of years ago. The city of Nome missed its last fuel delivery, and through a sequence of events, we were able to provide an indigenous-owned company called Sitnasak Native Corporation with the winter fuel supply in Nome. One of the great things about the iPhone is it takes panoramic pictures, and so across the bottom you can see the Port of Nome. This was taken about 4 p.m. on January 8th, 2012, and this is the marine header where we were about to deliver 1.6 million gallons of fuel here within a few days. Some of the lessons I learned on this trip to Nome were, first, do no harm. The variety of characters that were involved with this were very concerned that we have safety of the crew and the participants in the delivery, and also an extreme concern for the environment. So this was a shared opportunity for a wide group of people across the Arctic to be involved. I'd like to point out the gentlemen in the upper right of the slide. 2 of them have orange stripes on their safety vests, and 2 of them have silver stripes. None of those folks are my employees, but they're making a hose connection. The gentlemen in the orange stripes are Sitnasak shareholders that are out there assisting 2 Russian sailors make a hose connection in about minus 30-degree Fahrenheit weather. Actually, we put together almost a mile of hose with segments every 50 meters, and just making this physical connection turned out to be quite an international effort of cooperation. The bottom panorama across there shows several people out in an ice field, and again, demonstrates the level of cooperation that's required in any Arctic operation. We had a wide variety of folks that wanted to participate and actually had regulatory authority. So we had the State of Alaska, Department of Environmental Conservation. We had the Federal Aviation Administration that was there to make sure the airspace was clear. They deployed a drone to do ice surveys around the vessel. We had City of Nome Police Department, and we had various fish and wildlife, both federal and state, that were out to make sure that the crab fishermen and the cod fishermen all knew what was going on and to give us some advice about ice movement outside the Port of Nome. Again, the part of the theme of the conference is responsibility, and a lot of that is the economic responsibility. And this was another great example where interests came into alignment. The resilience of folks in the Arctic is fairly dramatic. It's an area where there's not a lot of people. And having grown up on the coast of Alaska, anytime there was something unusual in our village, it created a lot of attention. We were all anxious to find anything out of the ordinary. And this trip to Nome was the first midwinter delivery to any Alaskan port. And it was an item of great interest. And so we had the customer that was taking delivery of the fuel was an indigenous-owned company called Sitnasak Native Corporation. And the fuel was for their subsidiary Bonanza Fuel. And as you can see there in the bottom of the picture, a majority of those were Sitnasak shareholders that got into their cold weather gear, came out, and literally helped us drag this rather heavy, black, cold, stiff hose roughly half a mile from where the tank ship was able to get parked to where the header was at Nome. One of the aspects of this journey was the level of international cooperation. The tank ship that you see is actually constructed in Finland, sold to a Russian company in the Far East, managed by a shipping company in Miami, Florida, and having a very international crew. I just came back from the Russian-American Pacific Partnership meeting in Vladivostok, and one of the themes echoed in there was that political cooperation actually follows trade. And I certainly found that that was true in this case, where there was trade going on between Nome and the Far East. It generated a lot of cooperation, and politically it was one of the few things that was a bright spot in U.S.-Russian relations that have had their ups and downs on the national level. Another aspect of shipping in the Arctic in general is leaving something with the community. When we travel back and forth, many of our destinations don't have a lot of the tools that we have. And so when we leave, we want to make sure that we leave a few things that improve the community. And a lot of that is just helping the local operators operate in a more modern and standard way. And so often tools, petroleum measurement devices, petroleum testing devices, and including the local operators in the transfer is one way that as shippers we can make a difference and share the success of an operation. Infrastructure. One of the fallout aspects of this trip to Nome was that the U.S. government realized how poor their icebreaking fleet was. The ship that assisted the tank vessel to Nome was really a research vessel and not an icebreaker that was designed for shipping. So it highlighted a lot of issues, and out of this operation, one of the shared successes is that the Coast Guard was able to make an impression with the United States Congress to fund icebreaking construction. So $8 million was given to the Coast Guard immediately after this operation to start design efforts for the first of the American fleet. Another aspect was the city of Nome immediately began planning for port expansion. So this trip stimulated a lot of consideration about what we need for vessel infrastructure and for physical infrastructure in the Alaskan Arctic. It's already been mentioned numerous times in this conference, Sakhalin Island, the Red Dog zinc mine that Reggie mentioned this morning, numerous colleagues from the North Slope, and the lessons learned from Prudhoe Bay. And when you get the local population and the corporations that are out to exploit the vast resources of the Arctic, I think through sometimes strident and prolonged negotiation, you eventually end up at the area where you have alignment of interest. And I think that's where the success of the Arctic lies. Just as a final thought here, across the bottom of the slide, you can see a picture of the Coast Guard icebreaker Healy. And off in the far right, you can see the Russian tanker Renda. And for many people, the main part of the story of this Nome delivery was the U.S. Coast Guard. And so I often compare two perspectives. For us, the Renda loomed large in our operation, but for most folks, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Healy was the center of attention. The Coast Guard, by the way, I think had about 8 public affairs officers that covered this and made sure that there was about 11,000 news stories that went out. So this is the end of the presentation. I'm giving my presentation in reverse. So a little bit about Vitus Marine. I'm a 4th generation marine operator. It's a picture of my grandfather tending fish in Bristol Bay. This picture was taken probably about 1945. Here is my perspective of the Arctic. Alaska is front and center. Zooming in to my village. This is where I grew up, went to school. Approximately 95% Yupik people speaking the Yupik language. My only bilingualism is Yupik, and so the greeting for you folks today is Waqqa iluk, which essentially translates, "What's up, cousin?" And I think that that's the way that generally the embracing nature of the indigenous people of the Arctic is that it's, hey, what's up? What can we do to work together? So final, ending the presentation with a bit of a joke. My uncle was a school teacher here where I went to school, and he kept in his pocket a absence excuse. One of my colleagues, or one of my fellow students, when I was in about 5th grade, missed school for a couple days, and the state requires that you submit an excuse for missing school. His parents couldn't write English, so he wrote his own excuse. And it said, "Dear teacher, I didn't come to school for 2 days because it was snowing too hard. And I went rabbit hunting. Thank you very much.